A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Gabriel Garcia Marquez was born in 1928 in the small town of Aracataca near the Caribbean coast of Colombia. He was the oldest of 12 children and was raised by his maternal grandmother until sent to school near Bogota at age 8. While living in his grandparents' big, gloomy home, his grandmother told him folk tales full of ghosts, omens, and supernatural events, but in the most natural, matter-of-fact tone. His grandfather, a retired leftist colonel, greatly influenced him as well, taking him to the circus each year and introducing him to ice. He used this memory in the opening lines of his Nobel Prize-winning novel, 100 Years of Solitude. Many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Arellano Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. His family wanted him to study law, and he gave it a try, but hated it, and left school after 5 years without a degree. One day, while driving between Mexico City and Acapulco, the whole first chapter of 100 Years of Solitude came to him. He went home, told his wife not to disturb him with problems, and spent the next year and a half writing, shut in a room for 8 to 10 hours a day. His wife sold their car, pawned household appliances, and applied for numerous loans. In 1967, the first printing of the novel sold out in less than a week and has now sold about 30 million copies. The great poet Pablo Neruda called it perhaps the greatest revelation in the Spanish language since Don Quixote of Cervantes. Garcia Marquez said, ultimately, literature is nothing but carpentry. Marquez mingles realistic and fantastic details in all of his fiction. He writes in a style called magic realism. Magic realism, sometimes referred to as magical realism, is a contemporary narrative style that grew out of the Surrealist movement and was originally associated with art that blended realist aspects with strange or dreamlike imagery. In a literary context, Garcia Marquez is most associated with it, but the style also describes the work of such writers as Kafka, Borges, Fuentes, Allende, and Esquivel. These writers combine realism in their portrayal of everyday events and descriptive details together with fantastic and dreamlike elements. They often violate traditional narrative and realist conventions by playing with subject matter, structure, chronology, and other aspects, fusing the everyday, the folkloric, and the illusory. In short, they mix the magical and the mundane, but in an overall context of realistic storytelling. A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings contains many characters, all of which are fairly flat. No one grows or changes in any significant way. Also, in a way, all of the townspeople together can be seen as one character, acting and responding to the angel in a similar manner. The angel and the Spider-Woman are fantastic characters, but are presented with highly realistic details. Other characters, the neighbor woman and Father Gonzaga, in particular, make exaggerated and absurd statements. Such descriptions are in keeping with the style of magic realism. Elisenda and Pelayo adapt to the old man, but later see him as a nuisance and treat him like a circus sideshow, opportunistically getting rich off of him and not appreciating his positive effect on the health of their son. The point of view of the story is mainly dramatic or objective. There appear to be areas of omniscient point of view, but such remarks are reportorial, not interpretive. The tone relates to the point of view in that the voice sounds as if what occurs, an angel falling out of the sky, is nothing terribly unusual. The tone is also often satirical. Consider what Garcia Marquez might be saying about opportunism, religion, and people's limited attention span. The story contains many themes. The fragility of life, as when the sick child recovers, how people adapt but also become opportunistic for their own survival, how people often don't see the good or even the miraculous in their midst, the fact that human beings by nature reduce everything to their own levels of comprehension, and the curiosity people show in unusual things, but also their fickleness when the novelty wears thin.